Good morning, everyone. This is the Wednesday, 9th of December BoCC business meeting. Just wanted to note for the record that we recognize the governor's mask order is in effect, both the requirements and exemptions. There are a couple of the exemptions are for folks that are speaking in public, like I and Commissioner Grant and staff will be doing and speaking for broadcast. There are many personal exemptions as well. So do ask if you come to the podium to speak. If you have a mask on, it's about 12 feet away, relatively safe. So if you could and feel comfortable doing so, remove your mask so we can hear you clearly and it broadcasts clearly. With that, before we get started, I'd like to invite Pastor Bob Meyer up to give the invocation and lead us in the pledge.
Shall we pray together? Father, we worship you today. We recognize that you rule over many nations, and we submit ourselves to your will. We pray for our nation and our county. What a desperate time for our nation. And we're going to do everything in our power to do what's right, to preserve the freedoms of this country. And yet we also acknowledge that the final authority is yours. So we call upon you, Lord, to work powerfully, to see that the election is fair and free, that any fraud is found and overturned. And we pray, Lord, send an army of angels to oversee this process, to convince the people who need to make the right decisions. I pray this morning for our county commissioners, for all of our leaders in this county. We pray that you give them supernatural wisdom. Guide them to make decisions which are right and just and beneficial. In all of these things, we can depend upon you. We can trust you and know that you're going to be at work. And Lord, I pray for the church in this county as well, the churches, that you would work powerfully in those congregations, because ultimately they have the authority of the gospel from you, the ability to transform lives for good. And I pray that you'd protect them, that you'd guide them, you'd bless them, guide all those pastors to honestly serve you, to do what you have called us to do. And I pray too for your special protection against this disease. And we know it's a real disease, but we also see how clearly it's been so politicized. And I pray that you'd give our commissioners and our leaders in this county wisdom to know how to respond to that. Give wisdom to our first responders, the sheriffs, the police, the deputies. Give wisdom to them to know the right thing to do and the courage to do it. And I pray too that you'd provide protection for them in this time of such strong hatred toward police officers. We pray for our military. Thank you for their commitment, men and women who are committed to the defense of this nation. We pray for your protection in their lives and for your guidance for them. Thank you, Lord, for this meeting. We pray for guidance, for clear thinking to prevail. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. All right. With that, the time is now 9:05. Amanda, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Richardson?
Here.
Commissioner Pettit? Commissioner Baer? Here.
Alrighty. Unfortunately, Commissioner Pettit won't be able to join us today. So with that, I would accept a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the agenda as presented.
I second that motion. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Motion carries. The agenda is approved as presented. First item up is the consent items. I'd accept a motion. Second. Okay. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Elected officials, department head, staff reports. Sam, do we have anything?
I have a couple things, Commissioner, when we get Michael in here. So just to, Commissioners, good morning. Just to give you kind of an update, we still continue to implement the CARES Act project plan that we have been working towards since July. We are making some progress on that. That money expires on 12/30. There's been talk at the state, local, state, and national level of hoping that that money will roll over until next year. That would be great if that happens, but right now we still are looking at an end date of that funding availability of 12/30 of this year. With that, the grants program is a big piece of that. Grants to nonprofits and businesses. We had some staffing changes. We are back on track with that. First 4 checks have been cut and will be mailed today. And then we've got vouchers coming in for another check run next week, and we should be getting more of those. I'll try to give a better summary as we get closer to the end of the year on how many applications we received, how many were approved, and how many were denied. There's only been very few denials at this point in time that didn't meet our qualifications, and we gave them an opportunity to resubmit additional information if they needed to. But we're in the process of getting all that wrapped up. If that money rolls over into that CVA, that CARES Act funding money rolls over into 2021, we'll reopen another phase of that. Other than that, that's kind of where we are on both the CARES Act projects and I'll get an update on where we are with all the projects that we've got completed or close to completion that should be eligible for reimbursement to you by the end of the year. So maybe in that one January meeting, we put that as an agenda item to kind of give a total update on what we got, to what we're going to get reimbursed for, and who got grants and everything else. The next item I wanted to mention was that as is true in most counties across the state, we are going to level red. Level red has some changes that will impact our citizens and our businesses. Primarily, it will be no in-restaurant dining. That will be effective tonight. Restaurants can still deliver, carry out, pick up, but I think the in-restaurant dining is the major piece of that. So we are trying to get the word out about that also with the red status. We're hopeful that the numbers start going down. And then we are also actively working on the vaccine priority and vaccine plans once that becomes widely available to make that available in the county. Before that happens, before the vaccine gets here, we're actually taking a look at a testing location available for all citizens on the 18th of December. I believe that's a Friday, and that will be at Kiowa School. And so we are working to get that word out also. That'll be open to any citizen in the county that wants to get tested for COVID. Any questions?
The only question I have is, the schools and churches are not materially affected by going from orange to red.
Correct. Churches will continue to be allowed to operate, and then schools are their own special districts, their own quasi-governmental organizations. They will be allowed to make their own decisions going forward. But I don't see much change in orange to red for those two entities.
Yeah, I was going to say, we just at least received word from the Elizabeth School District. Their intent is in-classroom schooling through the end of the semester without, they don't see those issues going forward over the next few weeks. Right now, all of our schools are doing in-classroom training across the districts, which is a testament to how dedicated they are to that. As you said, the red level really, the one very singular and noticeable impact is in dining in restaurants. We did send a letter back up to CDPHE yesterday asking for any and all information they may have that our restaurants are a cause of local spread within our county, because we have no data that supports that. So it appears to the three of us that that's just a very unequal treatment of that business type. So have also joined with other counties to push the state to adopt Mesa County's 5-star program, which allows restaurants to continue to operate other business types that are under red completely closed to operate with very specific conditions in place. There's about 40 local governments and chambers of commerce that addressed that to the governor last Friday. And I think there's been some pushback from CDPHE that it's to them, in their eyes, it's just another program when they're really busy trying to figure out vaccination, as opposed to it's the livelihood of many people throughout the state. So hopefully more to follow on that, but we'll keep pressing. Okay, that's all I've got on that. We
Thank you.
may, just as we get down, look at scheduling another Board of Health meeting sometime between now and Christmas, just to give people an update, and if we have more clarity on vaccination plans at that time, it's probably worthwhile.
Will do.
Thanks. Anything else?
No, sir.
Alrighty. Next item we have is citizen public comment. Inform that we have no citizens that indicated they'd like to be called. No emails received specific to public comment, and no members of the public present. So that being the case, I will close public comment at this time and move on to discussion items. First item we have is proposed changes to the CDS development review fee schedule. This is specific to planning fees and some permit fees. I know a lot of folks kind of lump all fees together in their minds, but I mean, there are building permit fees that are handled through the building department. Impact fees, which we'll be discussing later, these are pertaining just to fees charged in relation to planning. So,
Correct, sir.
thanks.
Christina Stanton, Director of Community Development Services. I think I have both a yellow highlighted markup and a table to say what the changes were. Most of them fairly small. One was bringing the concept plan out of the subdivision piece of the fee schedule to the site plan piece, because it's lining up with changes we did earlier in the year with the regulations. No change to the fee. There was a slight increase that we're proposing for minor subdivision, and this is based upon how many hours staff is putting into doing the review, doing the referrals, having back and forth communications, and the amount of work that takes. So we're suggesting moving that up from 500 to 800.
Okay. And that, if I recall, that is something that became a new administrative process on your staff.
Yes, that
about a
has.
year or so ago, 2 years ago.
Correct, and now we've had it long enough that we can see how much time actually goes into administering it and going through that process. It was, when it was a public hearing process, it was considerably higher, and of course it is easier to administer something at the staff level, but there are some realities, and it's still taking up more time than we initially anticipated, so we're making this adjustment for that. Okay. Renamed and reduced SB 35 exemption to exemption plat to better match up with our subdivision regulations, and also changing that fee. Currently it shows it as $1,200. This is something that we see almost once in a blue moon. Typically you're looking at utilities, churches, cemeteries, things like that. So we've recommended dropping that just to 200. It's an administrative process and a very straightforward, similar to the platting, but much more straightforward.
Okay. And these, as you said, those are generally nonprofits or other government
Yeah.
entities, so we're just trading
It's
tax dollars.
very infrequent. Increased Board of Adjustments major, and again, this is looking at time. We don't have a whole lot of these coming through either, but they are taking up more time in the review and process and back and forth communications than staff initially estimated. So this is the same as with the minor subdivision, changing from 500 to 800. Reducing the minor under special use by review from 1,000 to 800, so it's a $200 down. We don't have very many of those, and the few that we do have are fairly straightforward. There's looking at the number of hours we do in the back and forth review, this seems to be more in alignment with actual work done. Reducing the 0 to 40 acres under special use by review just by 200, again, trying to line this up a little bit with the actual hours that we're putting in, doing discussions with the referral agencies and the applicants. Reducing the temporary use, 180 days in a calendar year under other, from 1,500 to 500, so it's a $1,000 drop. We do not have very many of those. The work is not a whole lot. I'm trying to think. That was actually the one I can think of right now was Pumpkin Patch. I think this may have been originally created for them a number of years ago, and they did come in and pay the fee and go through that process earlier this year. But there was some begrudging about the cost of it, and looking at it and saying, yeah, that doesn't make sense. That is rather high for the work we're doing, because it's somewhat similar to the group event permit, a little bit more detailed in the length of time and number of people. So this is where we felt was appropriate. And we also are recommending reducing long-term use exceeding 180 days a year and longer, and no longer than 12 months total under other, from 2,500 to 1,000, and it's kind of similar to pumpkin patch type of thing, except for a longer term use. So again, trying to weigh that against the length of time and the number of people and impacted, and making sure the number of hours in review and everything is appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, I think those make sense, and you know, if they're going to become more than one-off or like a pumpkin patch at some point, they probably would see the value of just doing an SUR or something that would add a little more permanence versus continuing annual fees.
So those are the changes I have for fees going forward for next year. We do not have changes in this proposal right now to the additional fees. I do want to point out that will be coming after we finish discussions on impact fees, and that's something that's next item up, and that we'll be going back and forth and working over. So that might be coming sometime after the first of the year. Did you have any other questions?
You know, just a question, do we have to have a motion to adopt this, or do we put it on the next agenda as an action?
We'll
item?
take it at action on the
Okay.
next, just give a chance for it to bubble around with, but I appreciate the work. I mean, it's, you know, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 changes, and 2 are increases of 300, all the others are decreases. So, I mean, you know, fees are supposed to support the service that's being provided and no more. So I do truly appreciate you taking the time to look and make sure we're not overcharging folks for any work received. So, and we'll take it up as action at the next.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Commissioners, we have 2 more meetings for the year, as I was going to talk about that when we get down to
Okay.
the agenda. So either the 21st of December or the 23rd, we could bring them back, or if you want to wait till the 13th of January, we could do that. But I think they're ready.
Yeah.
So one of those 2 meetings, I think, would probably be the best place to bring that back.
Yeah. I mean, as much as we can keep, I think the 21st is just a special meeting to accept other government's mill levies. It's probably better to keep that as clean as we can.
Okay, then
And this gives Rick a chance to review and ask any questions as well that he might not have.
Then we'll try to push that on the 23rd then.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Alrighty, so the next item we've got is the final draft discussion for the impact fee study. So,
Correct, Commissioners. I'm going to give the consultant a call here in just a second and pull up his slide deck. This will be the report of staff work done so far, and then we can continue to make any final changes to the document or to the fees. And we're not, at this point, bringing forward a resolution for adoption of impact fees, but we're trying to get that as close to the first of the year as possible. Our target date for that, I think, is the 13th of January meeting for BoCC to consider.
Alrighty. Yeah, if you want, we'll just go ahead and recess for a little bit while you get them online.
Okay.
That way we're not.
Anyone, Sam? You ready? Okay, we're gonna do this old school, so we're gonna put you on speaker, and I'll give the phone to Commissioner Richardson, and then he will be driving the conversation. You tell me when you want to advance your slides. I've got it up on the screen here. Does that make sense? Oh, are you? Okay, great. There you go. Okay, let's go.
Hello, Dwayne. Do I have you?
Yes, you do.
All
Good morning,
right.
Commissioners.
Good morning. I was just checking, making sure everything's good. We've got our county manager back to drive slides for you. So we had taken a quick recess while we were getting this sorted. So we'll come out of recess now, and I appreciate you joining us today. So this is, if you could, just for the record, introduce yourself and kind of talk us through what you got. And we've got a few questions along the way, and I think Sam may have forwarded a couple of items to you. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Good. Commissioners, my name is Dwayne Guthrie. I'm with a company by the name of Raftelis. We've been working with staff over the last few months to update the Elbert County Development Impact Fee. You might recall that in Colorado you have a specific impact fee enabling legislation. So we've drafted the impact fee update to be compliant with that state impact fee act. The latest report that you have is dated December the 2nd. And then Sam has a slide that we'll go over today. We roughly have about 10 slides to kind of basically review the work and allow you guys to ask some questions as we go along. So, Sam, you can advance to slide 2. So the agenda, what we want to do is review what we've done as far as community engagement efforts. We've been meeting both with the county commissioners in work sessions and also a specific stakeholder group composed of builders and developers and interested parties related to development impact fees in the county to go over the preliminary results and get feedback and modify things as we've gone along. Then I'll go over some summary tables. We'll kind of do more of a general view first, and then we'll drill down to the details of each individual fee, just to show you one table for each of the types of infrastructure that we're updating. And then we'll wrap up with just a survey of fees in comparable communities. So slide 3, Sam. So as far as community engagement, we've held 2 stakeholder sessions and then 2 work sessions. Those are the dates. Since we last met with you commissioners back in November, the only change to the calculation has been to the sheriff impact fee. So Sam, if you want to go forward to the slide 4. The methodologies and the cost components have been stable for the last couple times that you've seen them. Basically, we're updating parks and recreation. All the fees are going to be applied to the entire unincorporated area. So we have one service area, which is all the unincorporated Elbert County. The methodology is, for most of them, we've identified your current standards, those in terms of a quantifiable measurement, such as acres of parkland or improved parkland, and then a cost factor for each one of those. And then the way we vary the cost depends on the types of facilities. So parks and recreation is just allocated to population. Public facilities and the sheriff are allocated to both residential and non-residential development, but most of the cost is paid by residential. And that was done based on what we call functional population, has to do with the number of residents and jobs in the community, with some adjustments for commuting patterns and that type of thing. As we've discussed, Albert's trying to encourage more non-residential development and make sure that for economic development purposes that we have good fees that are proportionate to the actual demand for non-residential development. So we've made some changes along the way that we'll go over in just a minute that I think has improved that proportionality. Transportation is the biggest fee. It's done based on vehicle miles of travel, and we've basically have several cost factors for transportation. We're looking at expanding arterials and collectors. We're adding a component to expand the road and bridge shop and add additional rolling stock, so things like graders and snowplows, those type of things. And then we have a plant-based component for improving bridges. So this is only paying for the growth share of those bridges, but it is a significant, over the next 10 years, it's roughly $1 million worth of improvements to be funded by the impact fees. And then the final one, the sheriff, is also for buildings and vehicles. So we've documented, for instance, the current fleet, how many vehicles the sheriff operates, and what's the cost for a new vehicle fully loaded with all the electronics, technology, communications, all that. Those things are added into the cost of those additional vehicles. So Sam, let's go on to slide 5. If you want to have any questions on this one, feel free to interrupt. This is a summary table of the proposed maximum supportable fees. The commission also has the option of doing something less than the maximum supportable. Sometimes jurisdictions will say, let's only adopt 90% of the maximum, or they might vary the percentage by type of infrastructure. But the easiest way, of course, is just to approve the maximum supportable amount. So we've got the individual columns shown for each of the types of fees, and then the way that the fees are structured, they're per dwelling unit for residential. We have 3 categories today. So in the new proposed fees, we've added a 4th category for large single family, and we've used a size threshold of 2,600 square feet to differentiate the average size single family, which would be 2,600 or less square feet of finished floor space. And then everything above that would be a large single family, and that, again, is finished floor space. So that's going to exclude garages or porches, any outdoor living area, that type of thing. Outdoor space, that would be excluded. On the non-residential, it's per 1,000 square feet of floor area. So we have 4 general categories, which is consistent with the way the Colorado legislation is written. Impact fees are supposed to be imposed legislatively on a broad class of property. So it's not an individual determination for each proposed development that comes along, but you're supposed to basically, set up a fee schedule that's easy to implement, easy for the private sector folks to kind of determine what category they will likely fall into. And then it's all on a per 1,000 square foot basis. So for instance, if you want to look at the bottom category of retail restaurant, the total maximum supportable fee is $10,870 per 1,000 square feet of floor area. So a small mom and pop operation might only have 2,000 square feet, roughly the size of an average house. So they would pay 2 times that $10,000, so roughly $20,000 plus, depending on the specific floor area. In contrast, a big box like a Walmart that would have over 100,000 square feet would pay 100 times that amount. It's over $1 million for that big box retail use for their impact fee. So it is scaled by the size of the building. And This is only for system improvements. So the things that are identified in the impact fee study is the things that we're going to fund with impact fees. So in addition to, for again, going back to the big box retail, if their specific site plan is going to be reviewed by county staff, and if they need what we call project level improvements, like turn lanes to get in and out of their development, or if it's large enough, it might even warrant a traffic signal. That would be considered a project level improvement. They still would have to pay for that ingress, egress type of improvements in addition to their impact fee, which of course wouldn't be applicable for a small mom and pop operation because the order of magnitude is much less for a very small building. So that's kind of how the impact fees work, and I would be glad to entertain any questions or clarify any issues now before we leave this slide.
Just a quick one on the sheriff's impact fees. I know you specified unincorporated. In the discussions with the sheriff, does this look at the fact that right now, though the town of Kiowa is incorporated, they do not have a police department? The sheriff provides coverage, and Simla, one of our other incorporated towns, does not have 24-hour policing, so there's a portion of more than half the time the sheriff is providing law enforcement in that area as well.
Correct. When we did the calculations to make sure that we weren't overcharging, we used countywide data like countywide population to determine the level of service standards. But right now you're not not doing the building permits for those incorporated areas. So the ideal situation would be to have an intergovernmental agreement where each one of those towns where you provide service, or incorporated areas where you provide service, would agree to collect that share of impact fee and pass that money along to you. But that's not currently the arrangement, is my understanding. It would require an additional intergovernmental agreement to implement that.
Okay.
So if you could, that would be the ideal, but that's we didn't assume that would happen with the revenue projections that we included in the report.
Okay. Oh, thank you. That's something we can pursue separately then. Thank you.
Yes. So so the calculations are already done to make sure that we're not asking people to pay too much, but you could ask those communities to collect those impact fees for you and pass them along, or ask them to come to the county and actually pay them directly to the county before they get a building permit in their community.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I guess the alternative is charging residents in the unincorporated parts of the county to support law enforcement in the incorporated. So yeah, that's a much cleaner and
Yeah, I've got one question on the non-residential. If and just using industrial manufacturing as a key there, if they build 3 buildings, is the square foot of floor area, is that cumulative? So if they have 3 buildings that are each, I'm just going to make it up, 1,000 square feet each, then the impact fee would be based on 3,000 square feet total?
Yeah, usually the way you implement them is you collect a fee for each building permit, and normally you would permit, I can imagine, the staff can clarify if that's not the way it's done, but normally each building would have its own building permit, so you'd have a fee for each building and collect them out for that particular building. So it would be cumulative.
okay. That's okay. Yeah, I guess in Grant's example was a little cleaner because it was 3 1,000 square foot buildings. But if are these generally looked at as a minimum? So if you had a 500 square foot retail building, it would still be 10,870, not 5,435, or.
No, I mean, a 500 square foot building is really small, but if you did have something that small, it would be, you could just use a half of, 0.5, and you wouldn't have to round up. You just could put in the specific floor area.
Okay. No, I get the others. Maybe not 500 square foot retail, but yeah, we do have quite a few things that come to us at times that have smaller accessory buildings.
Right, yeah, and so most
Coffee
of the times
cabin
with
or a small storage thing on site. So okay, that's more of a as we work through implementation on our side. So.
Right. So let's go ahead and go through the slides, and if any more questions come up, feel free to ask. So let's go to slide 6, if you could, Sam. So I'm going to show you one slide for each one of the impact fees. They're all arranged about the same way. At the top of the table, you'll see a generalized summary of the improvements that you need to make over the next 10 years to kind of maintain your levels of service. And that's based on our land use assumptions, the projected development over the next 10 years. So in this example, we want to improve 17 acres of parks over the next 10 years. And the cost factor that we have in the report is $68,000 roughly an acre. So we're looking at over $1 million worth of park improvements over the next 10 years. So what happens now is staff and the commissioners need to start identifying specific projects, getting the design work done on those things, get them into your capital program or into your annual budget, and start making sure that we can, build those facilities as we go along as needed. On the recreation building, it's roughly 6,000 square feet additional expansion over the next 10 years at $135 a square foot. So $825,000 would be the capital improvements that you're looking at for recreation buildings. And that can be anything from like a community center, a gymnasium, any of those kind of things would qualify. So again, staff and commissioners need to start identifying the when and where and what as far as the specifics on those capital improvements, and start planning those out so that we make sure we show a benefit to the fee payers over the next 10 years. And then at the bottom of the table, you'll see the specific residential categories, and then it's basically a cost per service unit, which in this case is a new resident, and then the average number of persons in a housing unit to come up with the fees. And you see the fees range from, the multipliers range from just like 1.4 persons in an accessory dwelling unit is the overall average for all those, and up to a large single family has an average of roughly 3.5 people per unit, and those are the multipliers that use to derive the fees and make sure they're proportionate. Any questions on this before we go on?
No, none here.
Okay, slide 7, Sam. Public facilities, it's arranged sort of at the same layout with the infrastructure categories at the top. And it has a typo I just saw. Albert count input variables. I'll fix that for you. Has buildings and rolling stock. We have square feet of buildings, roughly 10,000 square feet of additional office space. So what's included in the level of service standards or the general government office space, like the building you're in right now, the health department, those kind of things are what needs to be expanded over the next 10 years. And then rolling stock, or in this case, it's more of just normal cars and pickup trucks, that type of thing, that you'll be adding to keep up with the population and job growth in the community. So we're looking at a total of roughly $3 million worth of improvements over the next 10 years, and then those will be paid for by both residential and non-residential development. You see the colored shaded columns are the proposed maximum amount, and to the right of that are the current fees, and then to the right of that is the increase or decrease. So generally looking at increases for residential. For non-residential, only the warehouse, storage, agricultural category goes down. All the other ones are an increase. And that's primarily due to the fact that the current fees, you didn't differentiate by type of development. Everybody got charged the same. So basically, it's kind of an averaging where everybody got squished together under your current approach. We recommend a more proportionate, broken out by these general categories, and so that results in a little bit of a reduction for the warehouse, and then an increase for retail restaurant. So it's kind of like a gradient, the way the fees are arranged. The lowest fee is usually at the top, and the highest fee is usually at the bottom of the table. All right, next slide, Sam. Sheriff. We also have buildings and vehicles for the sheriff. It's a high cost factor per square foot because you have a high security measures and things associated with the sheriff office and the courts that you have to account for the in the construction costs. So we're looking at a cost factor of $370 per square foot. Again, adding roughly 11,000 square feet over the next 10 years, a significant expenditure of roughly $4 million for law enforcement buildings. And then on the vehicle fleet, that would expand by almost a little over one vehicle per each year. So that's kind of assuming that you'll be adding patrol officers or sworn officers over time, and you'll need additional vehicles for them to be able to use. The costs are allocated to residential and non-residential, and all the fees go up slightly. In the case of residential, the increase is a couple $100 at the low end, up to $678 for a large single family. And very little on the non-residential, very little increase for warehouse at the bottom end, pretty significant increase for retail restaurant. So again, all the current fees are one size fit all and averaging across all non-residential. So basically retail restaurant was kind of getting subsidized under the current fee schedule. The new fee schedule will make the fees more proportionate. So things like a Walmart that will have a lot of calls for service would have to pay a lot higher impact fee under the proposed new development impact fees.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions before we go on? Okay, slide 9. Transportation fees. We've summarized the growth needs at the top. We've got expansion of lane miles of the asphalt road network over time. So that's the most expensive category, over $8 million worth of improvements over 10 years. Then we'll be adding additional road and bridge vehicles, things like snowplows, additional expansion of the road and bridge shops. There are 2 right now, so this would be either expanding those or adding a third one, whatever works best for the county. And then there's the 10-year growth cost for bridges that I've included there, about $1.1 million. So this is the most expensive fee or the highest cost fee and also the largest number of improvements. We're looking at a total capital program of roughly $16 million over the next 10 years to be funded by impact fees. So we allocate the cost again to residential and non-residential based on vehicle miles of travel. And then we are on this one only have a small decrease for accessory dwelling units. The other ones go up for residential. And then for non-residential, you'll see that all the proposed fees are less than the current fees for non-residential. So hopefully this will be a savings or no longer a detriment to economic development activity in the community, and the fees will be more proportionate than the current fee schedule. Any questions on transportation fees?
No, and I think that it's our largest fee. It's also the largest capital facility, if you want to call it that. Our road network is by far the biggest infrastructure contribution, money-wise, that the county has. So that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely important. You have a huge geographic area and a large road network to provide access to development throughout the entire county. So the last one, slide 10, is just a comparison of the residential fees for some neighboring counties. So at the top, I have the maximum supportable amount and then Albert's current amount. And what I've reported on the last 2 columns are most of the counties have a range of low to high for residential. So we just kind of simplified that to show what the range is for each one of your neighboring counties. The blue box that I've got there on the slide, most of your development is going to be your average size single family house with 2,600 square feet or less, and that's finished floor space. So the average fee the fee for an average single family is $7,580, which is an increase of $1,822 over the current fee for the average size single family. The counties nearby only collect transportation impact fees or have no fees at all. In Douglas County, the incorporated areas like Parker, have fees, and then some of the metro districts also collect impact fees, but the county itself does not collect any impact fees. So you can kind of see your comparison of where you could come out and to the other counties. And the main reason your fees are higher is because you not only collect transportation impact fees, but also parks and sheriff and public facilities, which the other counties don't. So that's my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any additional questions from staff or commissioners.
Thank you. Do you have any? No. I did have just some questions, and probably can get back to you through the staff. But the one particular one just in the verbiage of the reports, there's a couple of uses where a current standard is referenced, like the Elbert County's current standard is 2.3 acres of improved park per 1,000 people, or current standard for rec buildings is 0.79 square feet per person. Is that truly a standard we've documented, or is that just taking what we currently have and dividing by population?
Yeah, the calculations are shown in the report, but it's based on what's the inventory of the facilities that are shown in the report. It's not based on your comprehensive plan or general plan, where it might say the actual adopted standard is X acres per 1,000 square feet. So yes, this is just based on the inventory that's shown in the document.
Okay, thanks. That clarifies. That's what I thought it was. I just was a little concerned that we're documenting what, is it a standard we're going to try to achieve? I mean, I think in all aspects of county services, we want to do more, want to provide a higher standard of service. So just the use of the word standard versus, there might be some other wording, but I don't want us to be trapped to shooting for status quo in terms of what we're providing to our residents. So,
Correct, and the impact fees will maintain the status quo, but you are certainly able to go beyond that with additional revenues. And if you have a specific revenue that you can use to bring up the level of service for existing development, then you can use a higher standard in the impact fees, but you have to make sure that you can basically raise that existing level of service up for existing development. And that's the hard part, that you can't just adopt a higher standard without having a funding solution to make sure that you can achieve it.
no, I don't dispute that. No, I appreciate it. And this is, I know, incremental going forward, so you're right. You'd have to be looking at increasing for everybody that exists before looking at increasing for incremental. So, any questions from attorney, staff? Nope. I think that covers it, Dwayne. I do appreciate it. I think like I said, we're short one commissioner today, so I would like to kind of schedule we'll do probably one more workshop on this to make sure we've got Rick's input or any concerns he may have brought out as well. So I do appreciate all the work that went into this.
I'm glad to help, and if you have any specific questions, just, Sam can forward those and we can respond back to them directly to clarify any issues. So thank you for your time, and hopefully this will be a big improvement and easy for staff to implement as going forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guthrie.
Take care.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, no, the only final comment is, as with all of these studies, implementation's the important part.
Yeah.
So I don't know when we're scheduled to have a plan for adoption, but the sooner the better.
Yes, sir.
No, and I do appreciate, intuitively, feedback that we've been getting, it doesn't surprise me that the non-residential previously had been probably set higher than, maybe, I'm sure it was supportable when it was set, because these do require external reports to set them, but it was definitely impacting the ability for new businesses to establish and grow. So
Very much so.
So I think just if we can set a workshop sometime when Rick is available to kind of talk through implementation, how do we perhaps implement a scaling up to some of the residential ones that may have raised, how do we deal with lowering fees that should be lowered and impact on folks that may have just recently paid a higher amount. I think there's just some nuts and bolts to work through, and then on the staff side to make sure we have an implementation plan that makes sense. And then I think Grant's comment on multiple buildings, that we're looking at this in a way where people don't get charged a minimum for multiple buildings when the collection of buildings is within a range that's a smaller amount. Anyway, well, that's nearing completion of 1 year long project, so that's good.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Sam. So next, minor issue, I think, would be, oh wait, we're moving on to action items. So. No
I'm sorry?
Just moving on to action items.
Yep.
Alrighty. So with that, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes from the November 12th special meeting.
So moved.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second to approve the November 12th special meeting minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item up we have is approval of the November 18th minutes.
I move we approve the November 18th, 2020 minutes and dispense with the reading of those minutes.
Okay, thank you. And I'll second that. So we have a motion and a second to approve and dispense with the reading of the November 18th minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Alrighty. Next was the small minor issue that we had to deal with today, which is actually adopting the 2021 budget. Not minor at all. I would accept a motion to open a hearing to review the proposed budget and appropriate funds.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. I'll second it. Motion and a second to open public hearing and to review the proposed 2021 budget and appropriate funds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We're in public hearing.
Thank you, Commissioners. Sam Albrecht, County Manager and Budget Officer, to talk about the 2021 budget. It's a long process annually for the budget. I'll hit some of the highlights. In about March, we start getting reports out to the directors and elected officials and department heads on how their budget or their expenditures are tracking. Middle of the year, we've got a pretty good picture of the first 2 quarters on how things are going with the revenue side, as well as the continuing to take a look at the expenditures. And then we start getting serious about what we're going to be doing for the next year's budget. By the 15th of October, a draft budget is delivered to the commissioners and made available to the public, and then we have a public hearing on that draft budget, which we held in November. After that, we do some final wrap-up on the budget and bring it forward at this point before the 15th of December in order to get it approved by the BoCC. And then concurrently, we also appropriate funds for the next year going forward for the expenditures. And that's where we are right now. We're 2 days ahead of where we were last year. Last year we did this on the 11th of December, and now we're looking at the 9th. So we are excited about presenting this. The one thing I failed to mention in all this budget development is that it really is a team effort countywide. All the elected officials, all the directors, and all the department heads come together multiple times to sit down and talk about the strategic plan, the budget goals, and some of the other strategy documents that are really drive the development of that budget. And so without that teamwork, this would be a much more difficult process, and we would have a lot more discussion, I think, at this level on what is goes into the final budget. But I'm happy to say that for most part, we are in consensus with the elected and directors officials. Not everybody got with the caveat that not everybody got everything they wanted, and not. So we do take a look at what's best for the county, I think, as a team, and I think that's important in a budget development process like this. There are 4 pieces of budget that factor into bringing the budget forward every year, and that is the commissioner's annual budget goals. We get those in January. That kind of helps us define direction for the next year. And we also take a hard look at that strategic plan and the goals within that strategic plan to making sure we're meeting those. And then we take a look at, I just mentioned the collaboration between the elected officials, directors, and department heads, and then what we're calling continuous improvement budgeting. How can we make our budget better? What does our auditor say about our budget? What are other counties doing with their budget? What does our accounting firm do with our budget? Say about budgeting, as well as the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, has recommendations on what a quality budget looks like, and we incorporate those things. Last year was a huge year for that. We moved that budget, the 2020 budget, forward a lot under continuous improvement budgeting. We've made a few minor tweaks to that this year, and our goal is to make the budget stronger and better every single year. The big thing that we did in 2020 budget that we continue to do is forecasting into future years on where we're going to be with respect to revenue and expenses, and recurring expenses versus non-recurring expenses. And then also the big item last year we did was also cleaning up some of the funds and the definitions, and adding some funds and getting rid of some funds. And so none of that, we didn't realign any funds this year. But again, we think this budget's a little stronger than last year's budget. So there's, so I want to take a moment and just say that COVID has affected every aspect of our life this year, right, in 2020. It's also affected our 2020 budget, and it's going to make the financials look a little different than we've seen in the previous year, primarily for a couple things. One is the increased revenue coming down from the state and federal programs that we have been able to incorporate into 2020, along with those corresponding expenses. And then there's some 30-month money that's going to affect the 2021 budget. The only reason I bring that up is we don't have any specific insight into additional revenue streams in 2021 or expense streams in 2021 related to COVID. But when we do comparisons, one of the easiest way for people and commissioners and leadership to look at a budget is, what did we do last year? What were we? And so this is just a little different with quite a bit of it. I think at year end, quite a bit of increased projected revenue and increased projected expenses coming in that don't make a really good comparison because of COVID of what a normal 2020 would have looked like. So then we start looking at future years too, 2019, 2018, and kind of putting a fudge factor or an adjustment factor on 2020 in order to make sure that 2021 is in line, and that's what we did in development of this budget. Yeah. And we actually did that before the 15th of October.
Yeah, I suspect, there's some indications the CARES allocation will roll over, so we may wind up reappropriating to recognize unexpended from last year as new.
Yep.
And anything new that comes out, so budget never stops.
And you're exactly right. There may be some carryover things from 2020 that will require supplemental appropriations in 2021, and we'll bring those notice those and bring those forward as we do with every other item.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about some of the changes made from the 10-15 draft budget, proposed budget that we delivered to you, to the commissioners. We updated some of the year-end projections. We looked at some of the different department level budgets and tweaked those a little bit, primarily in the general fund. And then the biggest change was taking a look at projected fund balances at the end of the year. We included some investments to meet strategic objectives, and those were both in alignment with the commissioner's budget goals and the strategic plan. There's three things there. We're wrapping up hoping to wrap up soon a compensation study. We want to set aside $100,000 to implement the first stage of what we expect to be a multi-year plan to make sure that our compensation for our employees is in alignment and competitive in nature with our surrounding communities. The other one is a strategic initiatives line of $100,000 to start taking a look at some of those other type things. We don't have a specific use for those yet, but it's set aside for those type of things as we see those opportunities and continue those discussions with leadership on what that might look like for 2021. And then unfunded mandates, both state and federal mandates that may be coming down that we may have additional expenses in future years. And so setting aside $200,000 for that to start those implementation process, we think will be money well spent rather than trying to fund it all in a single individual year in 2022 or 2023. So those are the three things that we added. With that said, I want to also mention that at the end of the day, this is a balanced budget. It does meet all the state requirements for being balanced, but it does dip into fund reserves a little bit. So some of this money is coming out of fund reserves, as we talked about in both the draft budget and in the public hearing. So this is an additional draw down into those fund reserves. The commissioners have indicated that they would also like to consider, as we get closer to the year end and what the final fund balances look like, to consider setting aside additional reserves, either in contingency or stability funding lines, to kind of show that we're doing good things with our fund balance. One is that we're investing into our future, and two is we're continuing to protect our future with a reserve line. I do not have a recommendation for the commissioners at this point in time on what that might look like. I just wanted to share that with you and the public to let everybody know that we are looking at additional reserves.
Yeah, no, and I thank you for pushing forward on that, because I mean, as you look at our total fund balances over the years, I mean, we have budget and regularly budget to use a bit of our reserve dollars, yet our fund balances continue to grow because, you know, our spending is very conservative compared to the budget. So if you look at the total funds available, it's almost a $10 million increase from 2018 to 2021. So, and I know about half of that now is kind of sequestered as for emergency spending, and we've made it through 1 year of COVID without having to touch that, but we'll see what the cumulative effects as we go into another shutdown, mostly statewide, countywide. I mean, it's going to have effect on our businesses, you know, the folks that are employed outside the county that may see jobs, either layoffs or jobs disappearing over time, and that kind of compounds some poor decision making at the state that interrupted, you know, oil and gas, a primary industry, and now 2 years of interrupted tourism with ski areas and COVID. So I think we skated through the first part of through 2020 financially kind of unscathed, but if this keeps continuing, it's going to impact. So setting aside money for emergencies, I think that emergency may be looming. So
Right.
yeah.
And the other thing about those fund balances is, you know, this is another year where Road and Bridge is actually pulling out some fairly big capital funds out of impact, the Growth and Development Fund, out of impact fees to do some major projects that is discussed in their capital improvement plan, which is attached to the budget. And so, you know, that is another thing that, you know, they let those ride for a year or two to get up to what they need to do to do a major project like paving 186, County Line Road all the way through, or to start paving some other major north-south and east-west connectors. So with that, just some other little things on what other changes were made. There was a hit list of about 26 things that we took a look at. Nothing major except what I've mentioned here. that would materially affect the budget from the 1015 version. We got little comment in the public hearing on that. Nothing that I thought was a material change to the request for changes to the budget, so I thought the public hearing process worked well again this year. So taking a look on the revenue side of this, we look at beginning fund balance, of course, at the top of the chart, and then we look at the revenues, other financing sources. This is not significant in those lines, but also transfers in, which are significant because a lot of that money comes from state and federal funding. And then we look at the total funds available also. So if you total revenues, other financing sources, and transfers in for the 2021 budget, the number is $34,029,873 coming in. This compares to very close to the 2020 amended budget, just a little bit less on the revenue side. Looking at the expense side, expenditures, we categorize those as current debt service, capital outlay, transfers out, and then if you look at the total expenditures and transfers out requiring appropriation, that amount is $36,913. I'm sorry, $36,913,554, leaving us with an ending fund balance budgeted for $20,846,740. So our fund balance remains very healthy as a percentage of the total budget.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
No, that's fine.
No, appreciate it.
So the next slide is just the org chart. We always put this up here this time of year also. We've tweaked this a little bit from the previous year, but this will be the org chart moving forward into 2021.
Ready?
And then finally, the last slide, as I mentioned before, it is a balanced budget. Reserves are secured. We are considering increasing those reserves. Depth and capacity supports future county needs. Again, we're looking at some strategic plan implementation, and we've set aside some money in that, and then for that, and then the whole teamwork thing that I've talked about with, this really was a team, and I can't give enough accolades to our finance team that helped develop this. Tiffany and Michelle worked numerous hours in getting us ready to this point. With that said, that's the budget presentation, and then I think we have a resolution that approves the budget and the appropriations that are also a part of that packet.
Thank you. Any
Yeah, I'd like
overall
to make
comments?
a couple of comments, is that in the last couple of years, we've been doing some major evaluations of county facilities and all of these kind of things. And a nice number within the budget is the implementation of these studies. Historically, we've got a shelf loaded with old studies that we can argue whether they're been implemented or not, but currently, if we do the study, we analyze it and try and make sure that we have an implementation plan. And you've got some of that in there. And currently, we have 3 studies going on. We've got the building energy study, the transportation plan, and a compensation study coming in. The one that, does this budget kind of have an idea that we'll have to have some funds set aside for implementation of whatever the conclusions of those studies are?
For the compensation study, yes, and we've added that $100,000 line for that one. For the transportation plan, that will be factored into the Public Works Capital Improvement Plan for future years. And the third one was help me out, Commissioner.
Well, it's kind of related to facilities.
The energy audit. So, yeah, and so we have, with last year, once we got that facility condition assessment piece done, we as a group decided, or we as a county decided to set aside about $500,000 a year for deferred maintenance and building improvements that have been that needed to be done. So that is continued this year. There's $500,000 in the budget for that. This energy audit, what we're hoping is this is an investment grade audit. With money being very cheap, it might make sense to invest in new windows for this building that are much more energy efficient. We will see cost savings based on our reduced energy expenditures. It could be that our boiler is inefficient, and it might make sense to do a boiler replacement in this building, or whatever other buildings and facilities that we're looking at. So yes, the money has been set aside, and that money has dipped into where I mentioned using some of that fund balance that we've built up over the past couple of years, and that we should be able to continue to support those type of activities going forward.
Just one more comment, the strategic aspect of the budget, the setting aside $100,000 for that, I think that's intended to be a recognition of the fact that times are a-changing, and we need to be planning for the future, and some kind of an implementation plan for getting us in better condition, continuing to get ourselves in better condition as we move forward.
Absolutely, Commissioner. As you know, I and the other commissioners have had several discussions about our revenue streams have not been are fairly easy to forecast into future years. When you take a look at what the forecast of the property taxes and the building fees and the other fees coming into the county, sales and use tax, it's fairly stagnant. It depends upon population, but it's fairly flat. What we need to do to explore is additional revenue streams, or additional taking advantage of job growth in the county, some of those type of things that we need to take a look at to prepare ourselves for the future. Because if we continue to see operating expenses increase on a 2% basis or 3% basis on an annual fee, we need to make sure that our revenue supports that in the future.
And just one other question, as far as the statewide legislation and elections and all of these kind of things, is the Gallagher Amendment outcome of the election, is that going to impact our future planning?
It will, Commissioner, and absolutely that's one of the first things we want to take a look at in 2021 is how is it going to do that. I think most of the counties that I've talked to are still kind of in that analysis phase. How's that really going to affect us with the other programs and services that we're going on? I can't sit here and tell you exactly now how it's going to affect future revenue, but we know we need to plan for that.
Okay. Yeah, I just want a big thank you, because I know this is an ongoing big project every year that never stops as we build the budget. But as you mentioned, the public hearing, since the public hearing last month, the draft budget's been online and available in the finance office for inspection. I don't think we've received any public input since. So I would add just my comments earlier about the kind of continuing impacts going forward of COVID, state level impacts with oil and gas, impacts on tourism over this last couple of winters. We've always done a good job of spending conservatively, but I would kind of ask as budget officer and all the others that have allocations for spending that they be as conservative in spending as possible, still, an eye towards keeping our level of service up. But potentially we've got some more uncertainty in the coming year than we did this year. I mean, we started off thinking we might take up to a 25% hit on revenues, and they stayed pretty much as projected. So,
Commissioner, we'll pass that along when we roll out the budget to all the department heads, but I can tell you that everybody is fairly conservative on how they spend. That's one of the reasons we've been able to increase the fund balances. But we'll reemphasize that.
okay. And then just to kind of caveat on what Grant was saying, I think, about 4 years ago, we spent a good amount of time developing our initial strategic plan. It provided a really good azimuth, and we've been following that direction. And I think in the coming year, it's probably time to brush that off and look at getting a little deeper into specific goals. So,
I'd love to start checking some of those goals off as completed versus in process, yeah.
so we know when we can shift resources elsewhere if we've achieved a goal. In the general, just looking at how we perhaps change revenue streams, so that was going back to this impact fee study. We got 1,590 people that are of our own residents employed in Elbert County. Almost 12,000 leave every day to work outside the county if, you know, in a normal period. I mean, COVID's changed that. But I thought it was interesting. We have 2,100 workers that come in to work in the county every day. You know, kind of working with our local business folks to see if we can get more local people employed in our local jobs may be an easy turn that keeps our money in the county versus giving it to others to go spend outside the county when they go home. So, I mean, that's all local decision making, but it's kind of an eye-opening number that we've got more people coming into the county to work than are employed in the county. That's kind of been hidden below the 12,000 that leave every day to work. But anyway, I do appreciate all the work that's gone into this, you and that whole team. So with that, I would accept a motion to adopt resolution 20 to be determined, a resolution adopting Elbert County's 2021 budget and appropriating funds.
I make, so moved.
Okay. Second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have, motion carries. We've adopted the 2021 budget and appropriated funds to support that spending. Now we have I would accept a motion to close public hearing on this item.
So moved.
Second, we have a motion and a second to close public hearing on items associated with the 2021 budget. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Alrighty, next before us we have a resolution to certify the 2021 mill levy to support collection of property taxes and allocating revenues from property taxes amongst the county's various funds.
So moved.
Of a motion, second. We have a motion and a second to certify the county's 2021 mill levy and distribute revenues to the various county funds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right. Now, I would accept a motion to open as the Board of Foxwood Estates and Foxwood Ranches Public Improvement District.
I make a motion that we open the meeting to consider the mill levy for Foxwood Estates and Foxwood Ranches. Public Improvement District.
Okay. Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We are now the board of acting as the Board of Foxwood Estates and Foxwood Ranches Public Improvement District. We have a series of these, or the Board of County Commissioners acts as the board for specific taxing authorities that supported improvement projects within several of our communities. So with that, I would accept a motion certifying the 2021 mill levy for Foxwood Estates and Foxwood Ranches Public Improvement District.
So moved.
Second, motion and a second to approve the 2021 mill levy for Foxwood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Accept a motion to adjourn the meeting of Foxwood Estates and Foxwood Ranches Public Improvement District.
So moved.
Second, all in favor of adjourning the Foxwood board meeting, all in, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I would accept a motion to open as the Sun Country Meadows Public Improvement District Board.
I move that we open the meeting for the Sun Country Meadows Public Improvement District.
A second, I have a motion and a second to open as the Sun Country Meadows Public Improvement District Board. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Similar to Foxwood, I would accept a resolution certifying the 2021 mill levy for Sun Country Meadow PID.
I move that we adopt the resolution certifying the 2021 mill levy for Sun Country Meadows Public Improvement District.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye. Okay. Any,
So now do we have to close that meeting?
yep, now we close that meeting.
I move that we close the Sun Country Meadows Public Improvement District meeting.
Okay. I second that. All in favor of closing the Sun Country Meadows and Public Improvement District Board meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I would now accept a motion opening as the Meadow Station Public Improvement District Board.
I move that we open the meeting for Meadow Station Public Improvement District Board.
Okay, so I'll second. All in favor of opening as the Meadow Station Public Improvement District Board, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I would accept a resolution certifying the 2021 mill levy for Meadow Station Public Improvement District,
Which is zero.
which is zero. That is,
I move that we adopt the resolution certifying that the 2021 mill levy for Meadow Station Public Improvement District be approved.
I second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Accept a motion to adjourn the meeting of the Meadow Station Public Improvement District Board.
So moved.
We have a motion, second. We have a motion and a second to approve adjournment of the Meadow Station Public Improvement District Board. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we return to session as the Board of County Commissioners for Elbert County.
Commissioners, thank you. Just for clarification, I'll, now that we've approved the budget, I will get the resolution and, in that, and we will, renumber it, and I've got a couple other typos that I'll fix, and then we'll get that up on the website as quickly as possible. We also have to turn that into the state, and we will do that. With respect to Sun Country, not Sun Country, but, Meadow Stations, that is one that we are paying off. And we are in discussions with the state on how to dissolve the Meadow Station board, that so we don't do that, have to do certifying zeros in the future.
No, I get that. I appreciate it, and I think everybody would love to know how to dissolve taxing authorities. So, but
Yeah,
no,
I think we threw the state for a loop when we asked them that question.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're doing a little research for us.
Well, that's good. So I know we sent a letter out earlier this year to the residents of Meadow Station, but paying off that paving project and zeroing out their mill levy, it's about a 16% drop in their property tax levy, which should be significant to most folks.
3 or 4 years earlier.
And much earlier because of prepayments and refinances that the county has done over time. Similarly, Sun Country Meadows, I believe this year, the mill levy dropped slightly, and I think we will be covering I think if they didn't this year, this coming year, they'll be paying off the zero interest loan that the county had provided to carry that project through. So the pay down will be much more rapid on that as well. It's a 20-year loan, and I think we're looking at 14 to 15 years right now to pay that off, and potentially could be sooner. So it's good to sit here and save a little money for folks. Okay, so moving on to board planning. The next meeting we have scheduled is a special meeting on the 21st, and that's statutorily required acceptance of mill levies from all the other taxing entities in the county, so we can provide authority to the treasurer to collect and the assessor to assess and do their job. But the 23rd is our next business meeting. We collected a few items for that, but I know we have a variance to hear on land use, and
The Fair Board submitted a report. We'll get that Fair Board report in there as a consent agenda item. The Fair Board president gave a presentation already on what that would look like, so we won't have her back. And then there'll be a couple other year-end stuff that we'll get in there.
yeah, if we could, just as a discussion item, kind of roll through vacancies that we've got our organizational resolution at our first meeting in January when we come
Correct.
back. So if we've got some vacancies we need to be looking at in various boards and commissions, if we can highlight either terms ending or vacancies.
Okay.
And then I think we have a tentative study session set for the impact fees next week. I think we'll probably just notice that as a workshop since Rick wasn't here. I think we need to get all three of us with eyes on the nearly final product. Alrighty, anything you'd want to add or?
No, I think we're getting close to the year end, and
Yeah, there's always a flurry
there's
of.
always these little things you have to take care of.
Okay, so with that, it's 10:26. We'll be in recess till 1 p.m. and we'll reconvene over at the fairgrounds. We've got one land use item to consider, one with a recommendation to continue, and one item that was noticed to be rescheduled. So with that, we are in recess. Thank you much.